We are a team. As storytellers and dreamers,
there is always magic to discover.
Once upon a time,
a Las Vegas showgirl
and a comedian magician
figured out that even with different perspectives,
our adventures and experiences together
are really just
one big
caper. We're going to start this episode with a subject that is kind of responsible for bringing us closer. I wouldn't say that our whole relationship is based on this subject, but it's certainly one that not only did we begin our deep, long discussions with each other years ago, but we still talk about, and something that people actually ask us about.
Yes.
So this particular subject is one that was requested for this series.
Yes. Backstage etiquette.
Backstage etiquette. Yeah. And, you know, in another episode, I mentioned our authenticity soapbox, but I think that we both have a soapbox called backstage etiquette.
We do.
That's based on experience with working with a lot of other people of varying degrees of professionalism and experience.
Right. And I do want to say, though, when he says professionalism, I know what he's saying. I know what he's talking about.
You can clarify?
Clarifying. I think that there are some people that are more rebellious and carefree than others backstage. I don't necessarily think it has to do with professionalism, although when viewed from the outside, it is called professionalism.
I can remember occasions, and I'm thinking of them very clearly now, where I, without saying it, certainly thought that is so unbelievably unprofessional.
Okay, so the reason I say that is simply because probably a lot of our audience, whilst a lot of them, because we are both come from performer backgrounds, a lot of them are performers and understand what we're about to talk about. There are other people in the world, when you talk about professionalism, and running around naked in a dressing room is definitely not on the list of professionalism. So,
fair. Okay.
So this is where I'm saying
there's an environmental difference between a burlesque show and a traditional theater show or a production show on the scale that you work.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot
There's a big difference.
Again, I'm going to bring back that dial it up or down. And for his purpose, he's going to use the word professional.
Well,
for my purpose, I'm going to say it's respectful.
I think that's probably better. You're right.
Okay.
I do recommend that if you can see all of your coworkers naked, it will change the dynamic of the office. I don't recommend it. But it's funny. We started talking about this, and nudity didn't even cross my mind as something that was unprofessional, because I spent so many years, going on 3,000 shows where I was looking at my colleagues in the buff, and it just... I essentially became desensitized, if nothing else.
Right.
So that in that environment was not unprofessional, but I did see unprofessional things compared to that, if you can believe that.
Right. And this is again, like, oh my God. So like that one time I told you, I don't know if I told you that one time that I was dress coded in the corporate office. I worked at a huge, huge sports retailer that is now defunct. I can tell you why. There are millions of reasons why, but I got dress coded for showing too much skin. And I was like, I have a tank top on.
But you were desensitized to how much skin is acceptable.
Yes, exactly. So then, so I say respectful, and then you get into, well, what is respectful to some might not be respectful to others, as you perform at Rise Comedy in Denver, and that is an improv.
I will never see any of those people nude.
Right. But I remember when they started to make the shift more towards more PC ways to interact with each other, because when you're doing improv, anything can happen, but they have rules to go by.
They're
I
working
respect
towards
that they have.
contemporary,
Yes.
very sensitive
Yeah.
policy, and it's totally respectable.
Yes,
for
exactly.
Sure, yeah.
So again, he's calling it professionalism. I'm calling it respectful.
It's difficult to define professionalism.
Yes, and etiquette.
Yeah, professionalism in my brain has its own fluid definition, apparently.
Fluid. Fluid.
So let's.
Okay. So I did a little bit of research on this topic. I found about 20 blogs.
Oh, that's a little.
I mean,
for you, that's only a little.
That's a little. I didn't read the blogs. I read a few.
I will set a couple of rules before we deep dive.
Okay.
One is that we're certainly both responsible and thereby going to be very careful so as not to identify any particular person as an example one way or another. Even if it's praise and this person was fantastically professional, we're not going to mention who those people are because I think that's entirely too researchable.
Okay.
I suppose we'll lay out a bunch of just experiences that we've had.
Okay.
We've had some together. Some odd backstage experiences.
Yeah. I have one top of mind, but I feel like that even telling the story will incriminate all involved, even though there were only about 10 of us in that show. So.
You do have, not any longer, it's ruined now, but there is an opportunity to make it sound like fiction. I'm kidding.
See, this is his secret. Okay, no, we're gonna make it sound.
You can hide the truth in fiction. Yeah, we'll be careful. We're gonna try to do this without having to cut out or bleep a whole lot.
Okay.
But
I get so animated.
I know.
Okay.
It's a passionate subject.
I think we both identified when we first got together how much more professional each of us, and we valued the professionalism backstage because I think it elevates the entire show when you have an entire cast of very professional performers that show up on time, that, well, I don't know why this, I did a little research, why it's, at least for burlesque people, it doesn't matter, why not have your phone backstage. Turn it on do not disturb or airplane mode. But yeah, I get that, like having
one
those
of the not to
notifications.
You,
yeah, sorry.
It's going to happen, but a lot of that has to do with the camera. In an environment where people are nude, even in a non-burlesque show, we have to change costumes. Nobody wants cameras.
You want to know how many selfies I'm in that I didn't try to be in? And I'm naked?
Yeah. So
I can't even count.
So there's a big rule right there. If you're backstage,
careful with your camera.
Don't take pictures, for God's sake.
I know you're looking at yourself in the mirror trying to make the perfect selfie, but who else is in that mirror? My ass or... Oh.
It's happened. It's happened.
Okay, so all right, that makes sense. This one didn't make sense to me. No PDA. No public displays of affection backstage.
I think...
Is that an
societally
HR thing?
that's a thing.
Okay.
But it makes other people uncomfortable, and it's one of those things that, not unlike desensitization to nudity, there's a spectrum of reactions, emotional, psychological reactions to witnessing someone else in the act of displaying their affections. Yeah, well, some are gross too, right?
I don't want to see people making out.
Right.
I get that. This guy right here is a very touchy-feely guy.
I touch people that I'm fond of.
No, you touch everybody.
That's true.
He just does. It's
I'm
his
not
way of connecting.
Gropey. I'm physical with people.
He will put his hand on somebody's shoulder. Hey, good to know you. That's your love language is touch, for sure.
It's indiscriminate, I suppose, when I'm trying to connect with people, but I've naturally adopted behaviors that are psychological in nature, and anchoring people with words, physically anchoring people with specific words is a technique. So
it did bring us together.
It did. And,
Just
there's a closeness that's going to happen naturally when you spend many hours in a small room with a number of other people. There are conflicts that are going to happen too that just, happen. But some of those conflicts are actually rooted in behaviors that I would say are unprofessional backstage.
okay.
Considerations for other people is kind of the major
Yeah.
thread through any of that behavior.
And the crazy thing is if you've ever lived with roommates, it's the same kind of rules. Like if you're gonna sign a lease agreement with someone that you kind of know or you're really good friends with, you have to have some sort of rules of engagement. So there are backstage etiquette rules. Like there have to be for that reason, because
Yes.
there will be less conflict. And the short nude room in Jubilee, when I was a short nude, there was some conflict in there. We were the most dramatic out of all the lines when I was in the show. The short nudes were.
For more information about what Athena means by short nude,
there are several YouTube videos.
We will give you, especially underneath this, in the description of this episode, you will have resources to learn all about what Athena means when it comes to short nudes. That sounds like a weird thing to somebody who is not familiar with the show. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm aware.
It's a showgirl term.
There's an easy resource and a very entertaining resource for you to get all that information.
I'll put the link in the show notes. Okay, so the short nudes were extremely loud and volatile, and yes, and we did have conflict, but we loved each other so much. Like some of those girls, I'm jealous because the reckoning brought them closer together because they could do Zoom, but they were doing happy hours once a month, I think, or once a week or something. They would
It's
go.
a sorority.
Kind of, yeah.
I think, well, so it's kind of it's an elite, exclusive group
Of women. Yeah.
of women who share an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's not terribly dissimilar from the bunnies.
Yes.
From Playboy. We mentioned that in another episode, but it's a similar in nature sorority, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Rules of engagement, backstage etiquette. We did have rules that were placed.
Like posted rules or
No,
contract rules, or
I think they were in the contract-ish. I don't have my contracts. I do have copies of the similar contract I signed. It was just spoken rules you learned during rehearsal period. This is how you behave. It was especially important for us. Stage level, there were certain rules, and then downstairs in the dressing rooms there were certain rules, and you just had to know, and you would be told if you were not, like spraying hairspray. We never sprayed hairspray ever. Spraying perfume.
You go into the restroom or outside or somewhere, at least in a corner with the can facing the wall. But you're creating clouds of smell and nonsense that affects it.
And there were some highly sensitive people in the show that would get headaches and things. So we were asked if it was in a certain line. And our dressing rooms were not small in that show. They were quite big, plenty of space. However, it's just common courtesy. I feel like most of these backstage rules it's just common courtesy. Like you're aware of the people around you, and someone might have an allergy to a perfume in your spray, or even allergy to the makeup you put on your own face. So yeah, I think it's just consideration for other people, and that's just, those are some backstage rules. Can you think of any other ones? Okay, Felix is going to school us because those are the ones that come to top of my mind.
In the Jubilee dressing room, and I've only seen photographs, but there's kind of, by station, there is kind of a territorial border to your station.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And when things spill over, that becomes a problem.
Yeah.
In my experience, most of these experiences are going to be similar I can think of things that are unique to working in cabaret, like glitter.
Glitter.
Don't use glitter. Just don't. Ever. For anything.
But that's what burlesque is built
no,
on.
God, Jesus.
Hot glue and glitter.
Yeah, it's not only environmentally unsound and considered to be a violation. Yeah.
Really?
They've had to come up with biodegradable glitter. But it's a mess and it's infectious. All the jokes are true. You never get rid of glitter. So it's again, being considerate of others. If you bring food, don't bring fish. Anything that stinks is rude. It's just
Same thing in
rude.
office. In an office, do not bring your leftover salmon to work. I've done it a couple times. That was enough. Each different places, but yeah, some people don't like the smell of fish.
And for eating, clean up after yourself. You know, if you leave little greasy marks on the table and then somebody lays a costume on it, then they have a oily stain.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah. And you're speaking from burlesque experience.
I am, where it's a more shared space because it's small.
Yes. When I was in the show in Jubilee, we each had our own dressing table. And yes, you know, we had 2 neighbors. Some of us were lucky to have a space. I was lucky every time that I had a space between me and the next person. Always. So that was nice. But
I did star in one show and I got my own dressing room with a door and I had my own bathroom. It was glorious. Oh, it was glorious. But I still kept it tidy. You know, I'm not going to throw my stuff around anyway.
Rising, remember?
I still kept it tidy. That's another thing. When it comes to, you know, especially a traveling performer, you know, when you're sharing a theater space with other shows, clean up after yourself for sure, but stay organized. You won't lose stuff that way. That's a big thing too. It's kind of annoying because of the frequency with which it happens, but it's every show that somebody's missing something and we're on the lookout for something and somebody gets blamed for theft or just if you stay organized, if you know what you packed. I have some great tips I will share another time about how to pack for a show.
Yes, that is on the list of episodes, so please keep the comments and the suggestions coming. We love it.
It's that behavior that affects other people that we're essentially talking about. That's the backstage etiquette.
So when you have a suitcase, so again, we're going back to burlesque. So when I was in the show in Jubilee, the only thing I had to bring to work was my body. Everything else I got to keep there. My whole dressing table had my makeup box and all of my shoes were at my spot and all of my costumes were hung behind me. I had dressers, or wardrobe technicians was their technical name, that would take care of my costumes. They laundered them. They made sure I had tights in case I got a hole. I had an extra pair of tights. I think we had 3 to 4 pairs of tights, but those people would take care. When I went into burlesque, it was completely the opposite, and I was fully responsible for every costume piece and my choreography and the music and my face and my promo images. Like it's just like it's a one-woman circus traveling around to different shows. That's pretty much what a burlesque performer is. And so you have your suitcase, and I am a very organized person. It's not his fault, but he has helped me organize because I wasn't used to traveling with my entire show in a box. Like, it just was not how I did it. But then as I did burlesque for 5.5 years, and I was appalled. That's my favorite word today. Appalled by some of the things that I experienced as a performer. For example, people using the biggest suitcase they ever sell, the biggest size, and throwing it open to take up 2 spaces so that they could live out of it. And, you know, the dressing room is like the size of this recording space.
Yeah, with suitcases, it's funny, taking up 2 spaces. They're like parking spaces. Yeah. And they're a commodity. That's dressing room table real estate, which is in short supply and important.
There's only 2 tables there. Otherwise, you get to use a couch or a folding table or a folding chair. Like that was what we were working
That's
with.
in one environment. I've certainly we have together used dressing rooms that were modified keg rooms, and that's your chair and table are kegs. So yeah,
That's a build your own dressing room sort of situation there.
I don't know how many times I've done that.
That was 4.
Yeah, but personally, I've done
personally.
it.
Okay. Yeah. So again, being considerate of other people's space, I've arrived late to a show. Not late as far as doors time, but later than some of the other performers, and there was no space, and I just had to kind of change in a tiny little pizza pie of a space between suitcases, which is, hard. But and it's funny when he's talking about people losing stuff, like how would you lose stuff? Well, we take everything off. Every number, we take off a certain number of costume pieces. I actually had checklists packed with my costumes that I would check off when I put it back into the suitcase. And I saw several, like it's countless performers, burlesque performers, just throw their oh man, there's another one.
You gotta write that down.
Throw their costumes into the suitcase, probably just sit there and smell for another week before they used them the next week or whatever. That's a whole other soapbox.
That's another. Well, it goes on the list though.
Yeah.
The smells that affect other people include body odor.
Oh, yes.
And you're talking about performances that are very physically demanding, and so when people come off stage, their costumes are wet.
Yeah, mostly because not only because they were shimmying and shaking it up, but they're just a little nervous.
A unicyclist or a juggler or it's physical.
Okay, so there's another consideration: hygiene.
Hygiene, but also if you're going to throw wet costumes around, that's just plain rude, right? That's bad roommate stuff.
Yeah, again, who's going to do the dishes? Who's going to wash those dishes?
Most green rooms and dressing rooms are very closely located to the stage. Athena in Jubilee did not have that experience, but in other places we've performed, certainly that experience. And it's for that reason that you got to kind of keep your volume down, because even if they can't hear through the stage, there are a couple of things going on. One, you have a house manager who is trying to run things or take notes from performers. You have technicians who are back doing the same kind of work. You have an MC who is trying to make sure that they are communicating with all the performers and learning how their names are pronounced and that kind of thing. And then with this just cacophony of noise and people, it's fun to perform and it's fun to be around other performers, but you got to kind of keep the noise down. Worst of all, the audience could hear, and that could be a disruption. So yeah, I'm thinking of a lot of the experiences I've had in which I could not believe that somebody was letting this happen, and noise was one of those experiences. I knew the audience. In this particular case, the audience could hear, and it was not kind things being verbalized, so that was a mess.
Ooh.
Yeah,
we definitely had a luxury in that we could shout and yell and laugh.
You were locked in a basement.
We were in a basement. Yeah, a lot of us all in a basement, and we could say whatever we needed to say, because we all had adrenaline pumping because we were all up on stage dancing, and then we'd go downstairs and change and continue the conversation we were having, and then we would go back upstairs and do another number, and we'd come back up and then continue the conversation. So it was really fun backstage on the good days. But burlesque definitely changed some ideas of backstage etiquette for me.
It's
yeah.
To bring back the word professional, that is one of those atmospheres that caters to highly professional, full-time performers as well as amateurs with zero experience. And you can tell who's who backstage as much as you can tell on stage.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I guess another thing is don't borrow anything without telling someone. Don't you ask for permission to borrow anything, and return it in as good, if not better, condition when you're done.
Yeah. I've lent some stuff.
We don't use glassware generally backstage. And that's for obvious reasons, I hope, but if something breaks and you have broken glass, and people with bare feet, even if they're just changing into different shoes, they're bare for a minute, so we want no broken glass backstage.
I know someone who got a full giant needle in her foot. So
that's another thing to be aware of too.
Yeah. And I don't know why there would have been a needle backstage. Most of the burlesque performers use hot glue to secure things. So it was kind of weird. I'm like, I hand sew stuff, but I don't ever hand sew there. Most of any maintenance I did on my costumes, I did at home. Because I don't want that to be one extra thing that I do before I get ready.
Things happen in the moment, and I have seen Athena repair the stockings of another performer while that performer was in the stockings.
The hole was like huge. I took a before and after picture. I should have taken a video.
That was an impressive mending job.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, but also it was mending on this person's backside. It was a feat.
Yeah.
It was a feat.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I actually have a tutorial planned to teach people how to mend fishnets.
Yeah, I guess that's another thing. I keep mentioning that I'm going to leave resources here, and the packing is a resource and a kit. We have teenage girls in this home, and one of them is going to her first formal, and I'm insisting that in her clutch she has a couple things like safety pins or whatever that can save the day. So for not just her, but somebody else she may encounter who has an issue. So I will be putting together a little emergency resource kit, easy to pack.
Yeah, small.
So I'll let you know about that. But safety pins.
Phelyx has saved the day many times.
And however that may seem out of character for a cis male performer, I have repaired a lot of brassieres in my time backstage.
Did we hit them all?
I think we're pretty close. Yeah, do you have a juicy bit?
I do have a juicy bit.
I think it's time for a juicy bit.
I really wanted to just say, can you believe this? It was another burlesque backstage, and it was a night where there were 2 shows. So it was a special event of some sort, 2 shows. And in between the shows, 2 of the girls decided in this tiny dressing room to do a full Brazilian wax backstage. Not backstage, excuse me, in the dressing room, which was not far from backstage. But people were in that dressing room eating dinner. They were resting, doing their things, and you've got legs sprawled up in the air, and you've got a full-on salon in the dressing room. No one asked for permission. Will this offend you if I do this? No one asked anything of the sort. It was just done. And that was the last time I experienced that couple of performers ever performing in that space. So someone must have said something. It wasn't me. But I did roll my eyes over in the corner because I could not believe I was experiencing that. Unbelievable.
Well, all right.
It's a juicy bit.
Believe it or not, I have similar stories, but I think that's enough. Yeah, you'd be surprised what has and can happen backstage. There's one thing we didn't cover. Something flashed through my mind as a memory of something I encountered backstage, and it was a display of affection that was a little much, a lot much. It was there isn't much more they could do.
Wow.
Thanks for joining us. We hope we've been entertaining. we're going to keep this dialogue going. Of course, as always, we invite you to interact with us. Any questions, observations, suggestions, let us know. We really appreciate that.
Yes. This is fun. Thanks for joining us.
We can't keep doing this without you. Give us just a little bit of your time by subscribing, sharing, rating, or talking about One Big Caper with someone else. We truly appreciate your support.
We want to hear your stories. Visit onebigcaper.com to get to know us even more.
This episode of One Big Caper was published in 2022. All rights to broadcast in whole or in part are the property of Gazellus Productions, LLC.